All right, how we doing, everybody?
Welcome to the Love for the Game podcast. Here's your host, Reed Napper.
And welcome into another live edition of the Love for the Game podcast. I'm your host, Reed Napper. Thank you for joining us today. Make sure to like us on TikTok, Instagram, and X at LFTGPod01. Leave a like, comment, and subscribe on the YouTube channel. And make sure to follow us over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Give us a rating over there as well. Before we get started today, I would like to shout out our sponsors, Squad Blitz and Outlier. And here's a little sneak peek of what Squad Blitz has to hold. Take a second to thank our sponsor for today's episode and the official sponsor of the Love for the Game podcast, Squad Blitz. Now, if you love playing fantasy football and you love college football, now this is the app for you. Squad Blitz, the only college football, fantasy football app that you will need. It's classic fantasy football, but with the twist, you're drafting complete teams instead of individual players. So you're drafting offenses and defenses relative to their passing, rushing, receiving, and defensive stats. So say you want to take Penn State for their rushing attack with Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, you'll take Penn State. Say you want to take Texas for their stout defense, you could select Texas. You join up in a league with all your friends, enter the transfer portal, to make new acquisitions throughout the season. If you don't like a team and you want to switch them out, you can also make trades within the system. So, classic fantasy football, except you're only looking to, take over full teams instead of individual players. If that sounds of interest to you, download the Squad Blitz app today. Fantasy football for college teams. And upon sign up, use Love for the Game under the referral tab upon sign up. And thank you to Squad Blitz for sponsoring this episode of Love for the Game. All right. I'm just fixing something real quick. All right. Here we go. We're going to get right into the slate. Week 3 of college football. It is here. We've got a jam-packed slate. We're going to be breaking down 7 games and hopefully making some money this week because let's be honest, we got to be better. Not gonna go into depth about the picks I had last week, but we finished 1-7 on the week last week. So we definitely got to bounce back this week. So let me do this. Bang. All right, first game on the slate. High noon Eastern, ESPN. Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia. Number 12 Clemson Tigers go down to Georgia Tech to take on the Yellow Jackets. Current line is sitting at 3.5 over on FanDuel. It's actually fluctuated between, it got down all the way to 2.5 earlier today. So let me just double check that is the live line. 3.5 is the live line on FanDuel. Clemson minus 3.5, over under total 52.5. Clemson minus 154 on the money line. Georgia Tech plus 128. Now, if we're looking at Clemson, this is a must-win game in their eyes after a shaky performance against Troy last week, was down 16-0 in the first half, going into halftime down 16-0, and ended up coming back to win that game 27-16. Biggest note for me, for Clemson, they gave up 223 yards through the air to Troy and 301 total yards. Now, if you're only outgaining Troy by 50 yards overall in the game, that's a huge red flag for me personally. Although they did cause 3 interceptions, but their inability to run the ball was definitely apparent once again. They had less than 100 yards rushing in the game and averaged 3.9 yards per carry, which for me, I know they got a converted receiver and Adam Randall toting the rock down there for the Tigers, but it's a big red flag if you're not capable of running the ball, especially against Troy of all teams. Like that's a massive red flag, and that's putting a lot of pressure on Cade Klubnik in that passing offense, especially. And I don't know if Antonio Williams is going to play this week because he did get shaken up in that game last week. He did get injured, so I do not know the injury report off the top of my head, so I have no idea if he's going to play or not. But the defense gave up a bunch of explosive plays, including a pick 6 on Cade Klubnik, and again lost Antonio Williams to injury. But Brian Wesco did have a standout game, 118 yards receiving with 2 touchdowns in that comeback effort against the Troy Trojans. On the other hand, with Georgia Tech, destroyed Gardner-Webb 59-12 without Haynes King. They ended up sitting him, which is an even better spot for Georgia Tech in this game, which could be the game of the season in their eyes early on in the season. And then shout out to their backup, Aaron Philo. He went 21 of 28 for 373 with a touchdown and interception against Gardner-Webb. Their running backs had a standout day. Malachi Hosley, however you pronounce his last name, 9 carries, 100 yards, and 2 touchdowns, while Jamal Haynes had 9 carries for 92 yards and 2 touchdowns. So Georgia Tech, of course, as they like to run the ball, and as we'll see in this game with Haynes King back behind center, they'll want to establish the run early and often in this game for sure. They had 5 wide receivers of 50-plus receiving yards, with a total of 457 total through the air. So even if you're not able to stop them, or even if you are able to stop them on the ground, you gotta be aware of their passing attack with Eric Rivers and I'm blanking on their other star receiver's name, but Eric Rivers is the one to watch out for. He's the speedster in that Georgia Tech receiver group. They had 6 sacks and totaled to 14 TFLs last week against Gardner-Webb. So again, their defense is going to be stout. They played well against Colorado in week 1 with a huge win on the road. They're even after turning the ball over 3 times in the first quarter and still being able to get the win with over 300 yards rushing total and 150 plus from Haynes King on the ground with 3 rushing touchdowns. And of course, the game winner there with under a minute to go. Biggest question marks for me coming into this game. How can Clemson avoid the slow start without a key receiver in Antonio Williams, and the lack of run game up to this point in the season? How do they fare going into a hostile environment against a team that's looked really good so far on paper in Georgia Tech? How does the Georgia Tech defensive line get after Cade Klubnik? Are they going to be able to limit his ability to extend plays with his legs? Are they going to be QB spying him, to fully be sure that he doesn't get outside the pocket? So that's something I'm really going to be looking out for in this game, to see if that gives the edge to Georgia Tech. What impact does Haynes King have on the game with his legs? Georgia Tech is going to be a run-first offense. They're going to want to establish the run early and often, as we saw in the game against Colorado mainly last week. That was the biggest factor early on, is how Colorado was unable to stop Haynes King on the ground. Now, they did force 3 turnovers in the first quarter, but that obviously came back to bite them as they ended up dropping that game. So I think a huge factor is how Clemson is able to control, or at least limit, Haynes King's ability to extend plays on the ground, and especially in the design quarterback runs, how they fare down in the trenches. And how does Clemson control the controllables? Can they control the sticks, stay out of the clock, avoid turnovers, and again, not get out to such a slow start like they did against Troy last week? If you go down 10-0 in the first quarter against Georgia Tech, I guarantee you it's going to be way harder to come back against Georgia Tech than against Troy, who you were down to even greater margin, 16-0 through 2 quarters, which again is not great. You're not producing, out of the gate against a completely inferior opponent against Troy. So a couple of betting trends for this game. Clemson has won the last 3 matchups against Georgia Tech, averaging 27.7 points in their last 10 games overall. The total is averaged a 54.4 average in the last 10 games, with the average margin of victory for Clemson in the between 5 and 4. It was at a 4.6 average, or at least in the spread, it's been an average of 4.6 points. For Georgia Tech, they've averaged 53.1 points total in the last 10 games. They've 7 out of the last 10 with a 3.4 average straight up. They are 8-10 in their last 10 games at home. And per my model, it gives Georgia Tech actually a 55.7, so we'll round up 56% chance of winning this game, with a projected score of 31-28. I think Clemson, their inability to run the ball is the biggest factor for me. And from what I've seen so far, they have no ability to run the ball, through against LSU and against Troy. Their defense has looked very spotty at times. If you're going to give up 223 yards to the air against Troy, I gotta go with Georgia Tech in this spot. And especially, I'm going to take them on the money line at plus 128. That's the current odds on FanDuel. I'm going to take Georgia Tech on the money line. I think Clemson's just shown a lot of vulnerability defensively. And a big note here: Brent Key, the head coach for Georgia Tech, is 6-1 against ranked ACC opponents. Do with that what you will. You saw him beat Florida State last year, hang around with Georgia through 9 overtimes last year. So I think this is Georgia Tech's spot. It's going to be a whiteout, just how they did, a few years ago against Florida State, and was able to upset them at home. I believe when Florida State was the number 2 ranked team in the country. So I'm taking Georgia Tech in this spot. I think you got a quarterback that's rested and likes to run the ball. I think Clemson has a big question mark defensively, and how they're going to be able to stop Haynes King in that explosive running attack. I think there's so many factors that go Georgia Tech's way in this spot. I'm going to take them straight up to win the game. Currently plus 128 on FanDuel. I'm going to take Georgia Tech to win the game outright against Clemson. Don't have anything on the total in this game, but what was my projection? 31-28. So could lean over in that spot if you're liking something in the total. But I would shop around that number for sure. But I'm going to take Georgia Tech plus 128 on the money line against Clemson at home for the upset. Into one of our 2 headliner matchups of the weekend, we got Georgia, the number 6 team in the country, heading up to Knoxville to take on the 15th ranked Tennessee Volunteers. This will be a 3:30 p.m. kick on ABC. I believe Chris Fowler and Herb Street are on the call for this game. So legendary duo in the booth calling this game. Georgia currently favored. Let me get the live line. It was 4.5 the last time I looked. But just to be transparent, the current line is still Georgia -4.5. It came all the way. It opened at, I believe, 7.5 when it first opened earlier in the week. So yeah, current line Georgia -4.5. Over under total is up to 50.5. Actually, the graphic is wrong. Up to 50.5 on the total. Now, getting into Georgia's side, they struggled out of the gate against Austin Peay, an FCS team at home last week. Ended up winning 28-6, but I think biggest question mark I listed was offensive consistency. Now, Gunnar Stockton was 26-34 for 227, had 3 running backs go for 55 plus yards, 190 total yards on the ground with 4 touchdowns. Question marks at receiver, outside of Colby Young, who's been really impressive for Georgia so far. He had 7 catches last week for only 76 yards, though. Where's the other production coming at receiver, especially when you're getting Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch coming into your program this season as transfer acquisitions? I think I need to see more out of the Georgia receiver room, and that's a bit scary for me because if you've watched Georgia the past few years when Mike Bobo is the offensive coordinator, he's kind of like a dink and dunk. I want to say he doesn't really take shots down the field, which with the 2 receivers I just said, Noah Thomas and Zachariah Branch, you would expect more shots down the field. He's more, we'll get it out on screens or, underneath passes and let our receivers use their athletic ability. And that's not necessarily always the best case, especially against, you're going to face a tough defense in Tennessee. But it is worth noting Tennessee is without their top 2 cornerbacks. So I'm curious to see if Georgia is really going to take advantage of that, especially with all these incoming receivers, that we've been hyping up coming into the season. Typical Georgia defense, they'll be strong at all 3 levels. I really have no question marks on the Georgia defense, especially with Kirby Smart still there as a head coach. I definitely expect Georgia to be prepared defensively coming into this game for sure. Again, biggest question marks is how is Gunnar Stockton, going to play against the best competition he's seen so far this season. Could say the best competition he's seen so far because he really only he played against Texas for a half last year and Notre Dame, and he kind of got shut out in both of those. So it's really a big question mark here how Gunnar Stockton's going to play in his first true away game as well, because both those playoff games were at neutral sites, or the SEC championship and then the playoff game were both at neutral venues last year. So his first true road test, which I think is a very interesting narrative coming into this game. But again, how are they going to utilize those receivers? Are they going to be able to scheme up well against this Tennessee defense, which is going to be strong on all 3 levels, especially on the defensive front? Tennessee side, they absolutely destroyed East Tennessee State. Shout out Cade McNamara, former Iowa transfer. They beat them 72-17 in week 2. Joey Aguilar. Some people are saying he might be an upgrade to Nico Iamaleava from last season, and I might be in that camp as well. Especially if he performs well in this game, I definitely could be persuaded. Joey Aguilar went 23-31 last week for 288 yards with 2 touchdowns. I like the running back production. They had 4 running backs go for over 37 yards, 276 total yards on the ground with a 5.9 per yards per carry average, with 5 touchdowns. So if you've watched Tennessee, what you're going to get out of a Josh Heupel offense. They're going to be run first, and then once you bring more guys into the box close to the line of scrimmage, they're going to hit you over the top with speedy receivers that they have. And speaking of speedy receivers, Chris Brazzell and Mike Matthews are the 2 standouts for Tennessee coming into this game. Chris Brazzell last week had 9 catches for 125 and 2 touchdowns, whereas Mike Matthews had 6 catches for 111 and 2 touchdowns. So those are definitely the 2 guys to watch on the outside for Tennessee. And they held the Tennessee defense held East Tennessee to 2 of 15 on third down with a 1.8 yards per carry with 49 total rush yards. I love that. If you're holding teams to, I don't care if it's a FCS opponent. If you're holding a team to 2 of 15 on third down, love that. Again, how does Georgia really stack up defensively against this running attack, because that's Tennessee's first priority is establishing the run. And I think that's a big question mark coming into this game, how Georgia's defensive front is really going to be planned for that, is really going to be schemed up for that, and how they're planning to stop that Tennessee run game. Biggest question marks, who wins at least the edge, or who at least wins or has an edge on the line of scrimmage. That's going for both sides. Both sides want to impose the run first. We've seen that from both these head coaches at least, and we know Josh Heupel's offense is a run first offense. We've seen that the last 2 years with Dylan Sampson when he was there, winning back-to-back SEC Offensive Player of the Year awards. So it's definitely going to be a priority for Tennessee coming into this game. If they can control the line of scrimmage both offensively and defensively, and the same thing for Georgia. Whichever team has an edge on the defensive and offensive lines, definitely could be a factor in this game. Does Georgia's secondary have enough to hold the Vols' pass attack? Like we said, if Tennessee is going to be a run-first offense, and therefore Georgia's going to have to bring more guys down towards the line of scrimmage or in the box, maybe if they bring a safety down or their nickel corner down closer to the line of scrimmage, how does Tennessee take advantage over the top, or how does Georgia's secondary combat that narrative? Does Joey Aguilar revert to his turnover pass against the best defense he's seen so far? At Appalachian State, he was pretty turnover ridden. I don't have the exact stats in front of me, but he liked to turn the ball over a little bit. So I think that's going to be a really interesting narrative of how Joey Aguilar really competes against the best defense he's seen so far, and especially against a defense in Josh Heupel's defense for Tennessee. How Joey Aguilar faces against the Georgia defense, especially with Kirby Smart there. They're gonna be game plan really good coming up against this Tennessee offense. And another thing, that Tennessee hasn't even scored 20 points. As long as Josh Heupel's been the coach there, they have not scored 20 points against Georgia. In the last, I think it's last four meetings, they haven't scored 20 points yet. So I think it would be a landmark even if Tennessee scores 20 points in this game. But which side takes advantage of the mistakes? Going along with the conversation of Joey Aguilar, if he can stay turnover free, does Gunnar Stockton, turn the ball over a couple of times? We saw that a couple of times against Notre Dame last season, which was the best defense he played last year. He turned the ball over a couple of times in some high pressure situations against the Notre Dame defense. So does that occur here as well, especially in a hostile environment? Which side will take advantage of the mistakes more? It's definitely, that's coach speak. You've heard it plenty of times from other outlets, but it definitely is a big factor which team can take advantage and also limit the mistakes in this game. Some trends coming into this game: Georgia, 6 out of the last 10 games against the spread they've covered with an average of 11.5 points, 51.9 total average in those last 10 games, team total average of 31.3 points in the last 10 games. Tennessee, on the other hand, 8 out of the last 10 games they've covered against the spread with an average of 14.6 point average difference and 51.5 total in the games in their last 10 games. Tennessee's team total average was 35.1 in the last 10 games. I'm going to take Tennessee in the points. I'm going to take Tennessee plus 4.5. I think anything over a field goal, I'm going to take Tennessee. I think this game is close wire to wire. I don't see anything over a field goal being the difference in this game. Might even put a little bit on Tennessee money line plus 146. It's now up to plus 158 on FanDuel as of recording. So I might even put a little bit on Tennessee money line. I also like the Tennessee team total. If that line is still the same, it was 22.5. I really like the Tennessee team total because I think, again, if this is a field goal game, that is still the line. Minus 120 on FanDuel. The Tennessee team total, 22.5. I really like that. I could even pull up what my model was projecting for this game because I did not write it down. So 1 second. But I do like Tennessee team total over 22.5. None of these are official plays yet. My official plays will get tweeted out most likely tomorrow afternoon before the Friday night slate, in case I put anything on the Friday night slate. But I think that's a play only because my projection put Tennessee over that number, and that reaffirmed my belief because they had hit their team total. What is it? Last 10. They had hit their team total in 8 of the last 10 with an average of 35.1 points. So if they're averaging that, I know they had 17 against Georgia last year. So realistically, they only need to get one more touchdown, maybe. My projection has them at 28.3. So if they get up to 28, I like the number. I get a 6, almost 7-point cover there with my projection and the number that I'm getting on FanDuel. I like those odds. Minus 120 Tennessee over team total is my best play right now. But if I had to pick a side, I'm going to take Tennessee in the points plus 4.5. Those are my two plays for that game. Of course, want to preface it again, nothing is an official play as of yet until tomorrow afternoon. These are just picks that I am liking as of right now. But I will say at the end of the show, I do have one pick that I've already placed, but I will announce that at the end of the show. Into the backyard brawl, we have Pitt going to West Virginia, 3:30 kickoff in Morgantown. Again, this is the backyard brawl, one of the greatest rivalries in the whole sport. Pitt is currently a 7.5-point favorite on FanDuel over under total of this morning. It was 56. So let me just confirm for transparency. If I can find it, there it is. Pitt, West Virginia. Current line still 7.5. Over under total is 56 still, so that's good. Pitt is minus 275 on the money line. West Virginia plus 220 on the money line. Pitt has had some explosive starts to the season. They beat Duquesne 61-9. In Central Michigan 45-17. Both those games were at home. Eli Holstein has looked very impressive up to this point. Against Duquesne, he went 15-23, 215 with 4 touchdowns and a pick. And Central Michigan 21-28, 304 through the air, 4 touchdowns and a pick. The West Virginia defense also forced 3 interceptions last week against Ohio in their loss. But we'll get to West Virginia's side in a second. Just wanted to point that out. The West Virginia defense did force 3 interceptions last week, so that's definitely something to look out for. Desmond Reed, the Pitt running back, has gotten the bulk of the production out of the backfield, but only 10 carries for 46 yards and also 5 catches for 69 yards against Central Michigan on 38% of the share of carries. I kind of was expecting more a little bit on the ground for Pitt against Central Michigan. I wasn't really expecting, 28 pass attempts. That was more pass attempts than they had against Duquesne for Eli Holstein. So I was kind of expecting more of a dominant run game in this, from coming off of last week. But I think it's definitely important, because Desmond Reed's kind of like a gadget guy. You can line him up in the slot. You can line him up off tackle and use him that way. You line him up in the backfield with 2 running backs even. So I think he's definitely a wild card in this game. I'm curious to see how West Virginia, tries to defend him. Raphael Williams Jr. has been the biggest or had the biggest game against Central Michigan for that receiver group. He had 6 catches for 121 yards and 2 touchdowns. Also worth noting, the West Virginia defense to Ohio's number 1 receiver last week had 8 catches for 121 yards and a touchdown. So that's also worth noting. The defense has been solid for Pitt coming in this game. The quarterback for Duquesne had 154 yards passing, and Central Michigan only had 89 yards passing. So definitely the Pitt pass defense has been the standout for them so far. On West Virginia's side, not the best start for now coming back head coach Rich Rodriguez. They lost to Ohio last week on the road, 17-10. Nico Markiel didn't have a crazy performance for West Virginia, and he's definitely the biggest wild card in this game. For on West Virginia's side, how are they gonna perform in this game? Nico Markiel is definitely the player to look at. 15-26 last week, 178 through the air and an interception on the road against a MAC team. No offense to MAC teams. We love MACtion, but just saying West Virginia, if you're going to go on the road, got to be able to perform better, especially against what I guess now is not an inferior opponent. They also had no real run game. When I was looking over the box score, no running backs really stood out last week for West Virginia. Outside of Jaden Bray, but West Virginia were completely non-existent, through the air and on the ground game. If you're only putting up 10 points against Ohio, West Virginia, like, bro, what are we doing? Although their defense did force 3 interceptions against a pretty decent quarterback in Parker Navarro for Ohio. Gave up 87 rushing yards on the ground to Navarro, 66 and 29 rushing yards to their 2 tailbacks for Ohio. Could be susceptible on the run game because Eli Holstein does like to scramble at times for Pitt, and if they're not always, if they're say too focused on Desmond Reed out of the backfield, Eli Holstein could pull that and scramble a little bit. So I think that's definitely something to look out for. Getting similar vibes to the UNC game last week or 2 weeks ago in week 1. I think there will be growing pains for West Virginia. Over 60 players into that program. I guess hypothetically a new head coach, even though he was there before, but 60 plus new players, new head coach, 2 new coordinators for West Virginia. I think this gives similar vibes to UNC with Bill Belichick in that roster. There's a lot of turnover, and it's going to take time for players and coaches to gel. And we saw that last week against Ohio. You go on the road, unable to run the ball, even though you did force 3 turnovers on defense, you still give up 17, and your offense didn't really give you anything, to support you if you did, give up anything defensively. Nico Markell is definitely the biggest question mark in this game. If he can form any sort of performance together, I think West Virginia has somewhat of a chance. But what I've seen from the Pitt defense so far, it's definitely up for debate. Does Pitt establish a true quarterback advantage in this matchup? Eli Holstein came in as a dark horse Heisman candidate in some people's eyes last season and in this season, and was good last season before he did get injured. So I think that's definitely something to look out for Pitt's side. If they definitely establish who I think is the better quarterback in this game in Eli Holstein. Who has the edge in the turnover battle? Again, West Virginia forced 3 interceptions last week against Ohio, and Holstein has thrown an interception in his first 2 games, both against way inferior competition. So I think that's definitely something to look out for, who's going to win the turnover battle. And does West Virginia take advantage of the raucous home environment that they're going to be in? If you've watched the Backyard Brawl before, there's definitely going to be, crazy environment. West Virginia fans hate Pitt. Pitt fans hate West Virginia. I live in Pittsburgh, and I have a couple buddies that are Pitt fans. They tell me all the time how much they hate West Virginia. So I kind of have seen it from the outside time and time again. And I think does West Virginia just take advantage of the home environment that they're going to be in? That's definitely something to look out for in my eyes. Trends going into this game, nothing really sticks out. Pitt, 3 for their last 10 against the spread. The team total has hit in 2 of the last 3 matchups in this game for Pitt, and they've won the last 2 against West Virginia at home. West Virginia, 6 of the last 10 games against the spread over team total in 2 of the last 3 games in this matchup, and won last at home against West Virginia. So Pitt, the last time that they've played in Morgantown, they beat Pitt. Both teams are 4 out of their last 10 in going under the total in 2 of the last 3 games in this. 2 of the last 3 matchups in this rivalry had gone over the total. So it's really it's a crapshoot. There's really nothing. There's really no trends to go off of if you're wanting to bet something on this game just solely based on trends. My model spit out Pitt 29, West Virginia 27. So I'm just going to make that Pitt 30 West Virginia 27, total of between 56 to 57 points. So therefore, based on the model, I'm not gonna go with it solely because I think Pitt is just the better team going in this game. I'm not gonna touch a side. I hate this. I hate the 7.5 number. If it was 6.5 and I'm getting a clean touchdown favorite, I would go with it. But you're taking Pitt to win by 8 or more points, which is realistically like 10 points. I just don't like it. So if I had to lean aside betting, again, not going to touch a side with this game, but if I had to pick a side, I'm going to take West Virginia in the points, which is currently 7.5. I think West Virginia can cover a 7-point spread at home in a crazy rivalry game. I like Pitt's under team total. That current line was, I will give you the live line, 32.5. I project Pitt to get 30 points. That's an under. That's an under on the total, the team total for Pitt. Pitt game total. Yeah. So they've hit the over in their last 3 games, but before that, without Eli Holstein at the end of last season, 25 against SMU, 19 against UVA, 20 against Clemson, 9 against Louisville, and 23 against Boston College. I think Syracuse, UVA, and Boston College are all, comparable opponents to West Virginia. I think Pitt goes under their team total. And I also like the under in the game. I lean the under for the full game, which is 56.5. I think, I projected 30 to 27. So, hypothetically, you get one possession less than that. I think rivalry games like this, unless you know what you're getting out of both offenses, which in this case, I know what I'm going to get out of the Pitt offense. I have no clue what I'm getting out of the West Virginia offense. So, but I think West Virginia can somehow find a way in their raucous environment at home in a tough rivalry game that's going to be, hard fought and close start to end. I'm going to take West Virginia to cover the 7.5. I like the Pitt under team total, and I like the under 56.5 total points in this game. But again, I'm not going to touch anything in this game. I'm just going to sit back and watch these two teams hate each other for 4 quarters. What's not to like about that? Something I might bet on, a game I might bet on, number 18, South Florida, arguably the story of the country, going to number 5, Miami. South Florida is plus 520 on the money line, and I will give you a live number. Here we go. South Florida at Miami. South Florida still is a 17.5 point dog on the road at Miami. Over under total of 56. It's dropped a point to 56.5. South Florida plus 530 now on the money line. Miami now minus 780 on the money line. South Florida, arguably the story of the college football season so far, beat Boise State, who was ranked 25th at the time, at home in week 1, and then go on the road to a very underperforming Florida team, who we'll get to later in the show. Very underperforming Florida team went on the road to Gainesville and beat them 18-16 last week. If they beat Miami, they would be the first team since 1987 to start the season with 3 ranked victories. Some people are saying if they were wearing Alabama's uniforms, they'd be the number 1 team in the country if they beat Miami, and I fully agree with that. I love their quarterback Byron Brown. His style of play I love, but will he be able to hold up physically? He does do a lot of quarterback designed runs, just out of the shotgun. We're running QB zone or QB stretch, QB counter, whatever the concept is. And he wants to seek contact, which I love out of his game. In his first 2 games, he's averaged 236.5 yards through the air, 19.5 completions, 7.9 yards per attempt. I misread that. 7.9 yards per pass attempt. He averages a passing touchdown a game. He's averaged 55 rushing yards on the ground with a rushing touchdown in the first 2 games so far. So I love his style of play, and he's one of those quarterbacks that, if you're a defensive player and you're on the sideline and you're watching him, waiting to go back on the field, I think he's definitely a player that you look at him play, you see him run through a defensive back, and it makes you want to go fight. It makes you want to go, do everything for him because he's sacrificing his body, you know, and his abilities for everyone else on that team. So why not go do it for him? And I love that mentality from him. South Florida has already established themselves to play spoiler to two teams this season, and has established themselves as a true American Conference contender. Say with Tulane or Memphis in the American Conference, and Navy can't discard Navy. But how did they fare in the American Conference going forward after this game? And they've limited the turnovers. They had no turnovers against Florida last week, so they cleaned that up from their week 1 game against Boise State. And only gave up 1 sack to Florida, which I think is really impressive. You're facing a SEC defensive line. I think it's really impressive that you're only giving up 1 sack, or that if you are giving up pressure, he's either throwing it away, dumping it off, or scrambling. So I think that's really impressive, again, from Byron Brown. But what impact does he play with his arm? You know what you're going to get from him, running game wise. As we just talked about, he's a very physical runner. But how does Miami counteract that run game to force him to pass? I think is a very, very interesting narrative going into this game. And how does, Miami counter his mobility? So say you don't get him down inside the pocket and you don't get a sack. Are you going to be able to limit him from, scrambling and extending plays, or are you going to be able to contain him and force him into some questionable decision making, or will he be able to handle that? So definitely something to look out for in this game. How Miami handles Byron Brown and his arm. I think they'll be able to handle his run game, but I think how are they able to handle his passing attack for sure. Miami, on the other hand, 2 great wins to start the season. They beat Notre Dame in the opener 27-24, looked very impressive in that game, and then just destroyed Bethune-Cookman last week 45-3. Carson Beck, as I've said before on the show, he's already proved me wrong from my talk about him coming into the season. I completely overlooked him and his abilities from the Georgia team that he was at before. And I think he's got a lot I think he has an extra chip on his shoulder coming into the season, because a lot of people were writing him off, including me. And I think he's definitely impressed to this point. He's come as advertised. The wide receiver group, has also proved me wrong with a bunch of question marks that I had about them coming into this season. They've shown explosiveness. They've shown big playability. But how does UCF, limit their shot plays? Because we saw a lot of shot plays against Notre Dame that they were able to take advantage of, and I think that's definitely a big question mark coming into this game about how South Florida, can deal with the, say 5-6 receivers that Miami's constantly rotating into the game, and they're also young, so even after Carson Beck moves on from this season, they're young. Going forward. So I think that's really something interesting to watch out there for Miami. Can we expect the Miami defense to have something up their sleeve to counter Byron Brown and his mobility? The best defense that South Florida will have faced up to this point. I'm gonna say that Miami's defense is better than Florida, just solely because South Florida was able to beat Florida last week. But how will the Canes combat the mobility of Byron Brown? And if he is limited to South Florida, say go to quick game against pressure. So if Miami's constantly bringing pressure, if they're bringing a nickel into the box to bring pressure off the edge, if they're bringing a 1 or 2 linebackers aside from the 4 down linemen that they have, how does South Florida counter that? So if they're going to run quick slants, screens, quick outs, something of that nature, the South Florida go and just get the ball back to Byron Brown in the snap, and we'll just get the ball out quickly to his playmakers. I think that's something definitely to watch out for. Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, the 2 best D linemen that South Florida will have faced up to this point. And do they have a takeover ability? Will they use their sheer force and how they closed out that Notre Dame game? Will they be able to replicate that for the entire game against South Florida and simply just take over because they're just simply faster, stronger, more powerful, more intelligent players than South Florida's side. So I think there's definitely a lot of narratives that this game could go. It's definitely giving vibes of last week against Florida. You can go back and watch the episode last week. I did say South Florida in the points. I didn't bet it. Wish I did, but I said South Florida in the points. And that was my pick for that game. I said South Florida in the points. So will I take that again this week? South Florida, 8 of the last 10 games they've covered against the spread with a total average of 57.4 points per game. Average against the spread differential of 8.6 points. Miami, on the other hand, has only covered 4 of their last 10 games against the spread with an average difference of 11.6 points. Average total in those games have been 58.7. Miami beat South Florida last year 50-15. They did not cover the spread. They only won by 35. I don't know what the total was, but it gave a red mark. So they didn't cover what the total was or what the spread was. The total went over, though, 63.5 points last, or 63.5 average last year. That total went over last year. South Florida, their team total the line is currently sitting at 19.5 points for their team total. That line has hit in 7 of their last 10 games with an average score of 33.2 points. Miami, their team total is currently sitting at 37.5. Team total, or that's hit in 7 of their last 10 games with an average score of 39.6 points. So this game, on paper could be a shootout or it could be a blowout in the favor of Miami, which is how the sports books are viewing it. My model spits out Miami 34, USF 25. So I'll say, realistically, Miami 34, South Florida 24. Miami wins by 10. That has a 66.4 percentage to win, which is a lot lower than I thought it was going to be before I tallied it. But 59.7 total average, so 60 point total. If the model is giving me 10 points in favor of South Florida, I'm gonna take South Florida again. The spread is just too big. I don't think these sports books have, really updated their models to really account for how talented and how South Florida has played up to this point. They've beat 2 ranked teams. One of them blew them out of the water. The other one went on the road into a very hostile environment in Gainesville against Florida and hung around with them. Outplayed them in a lot of ways. So I think it's just too many points here. I'm going to take South Florida in the 17.5. I'm going to take South Florida to cover it again. I like the South Florida team total over 19.5. I think they get to 20. I think they find a way to get to 20, whether it's Byron Brown again on using his legs to extend plays, or if they're able to get it out to his playmakers out wide. I think South Florida covers the number here. Again, I feel like the sports books haven't accounted for the competition level that South Florida has played to so far and how they've exceeded that competition level. I like South Florida in the points here. I think it's just too much. Miami wins the game. You heard it here first. Miami, or not first, obviously, but Miami wins the game. But I think South Florida covers. All right, I'm gonna go on mute real quick. I got some water to drink. And my water bottle is green, so I think even I might be a South Florida fan. Might be a South Florida fan going forward here. Who I am not a fan of is neither of these 2 teams. Arkansas at Ole Miss. Arkansas plus 210 on the money line. Ole Miss minus 260. Let me give you an updated line for the live. If you're now just joining us, I really would appreciate it. If you could give us a follow on X, if you are watching on X, or if you are on YouTube, remember to hit that subscribe button. All your support is really appreciated. I thank you guys for tuning in live. We currently have 59 live viewers, so I appreciate everyone tuning in right now for this week 3 breakdown. Really appreciate all the support. And also, if you're watching on X, make sure to retweet the stream. Would really appreciate that. So Arkansas and Ole Miss, if I can find it. This was a night game. I know that. There we go. Arkansas, Ole Miss in Oxford. So the line's actually dropped. The line is now Ole Miss minus 6.5. Over in the total has also gone up a point to 62.5. Arkansas is now plus 195 on the money line, while Ole Miss is minus 240 on the money line. Total actually, 62.5. It went up. Okay. 7 Eastern kick in Oxford, Mississippi. Arkansas, 2 dominant wins to start the season, 52-7 against Alabama A&M, 56-14 against Arkansas State. Taylor Green has looked really good with a couple of bumps. Let me preface that. He's looked good, but has also had some WTF moments. 7-16, 239, 4 touchdowns through the air, 2 interceptions, 9 rushes, 151 yards on the ground, and a rushing touchdown. That was all against Arkansas State. Their running game looked really good last week, to include Taylor Green with his 151 and running back Mike Washington, 9 carries for 116 yards and a touchdown. Receiver by committee, there were no real standouts in the Arkansas receiver group last week. They kind of spread it around pretty evenly. So no real receivers to really, key in on here. But they held Arkansas State, to 125 yards passing, 100 plus yards rushing on the ground, though, which I think is something to take note of, but also forced 2 interceptions. So if Arkansas can get a defensive performance even remotely close to that, I think they can be competitive in this game. Ole Miss, on the other hand, I want to say sneaked by Kentucky because that's what I wrote down, but they pretty much controlled that game after Austin Simmons threw 2 early interceptions. They pretty much handled it from there, even though Bob Stoops screwed me in the bet in a lot of America last week, with that backdoor cover. They beat Kentucky 30-23. I had Ole Miss minus 8.5, but we're not going to talk about that. We're on to this week. We're on to week 3. Again, Austin Simmons looked shaky early on with the 2 interceptions, but kind of rebounded pretty well. Went 13-24 for 235 through the air and also had a rushing touchdown. Kawan Lacey had a day on the ground, 28 carries, 138 with a touchdown. And Harrison Wallace, the Penn State transfer, was the standout at receiver. He had 4 catches for 117. Couldn't have said that last year about Harrison Wallace. So I'm glad he actually, found out how to play football again. So good for him. If you're watching live and not listening to the playback podcast, I am wearing a Penn State hat. So shout out to Harrison Wallace. He figured out how to play football again. They did give up 150 plus yards rushing to Kentucky. Ole Miss. So what are we going to do about that to clean that up? How do they account for the mobility of Taylor Green and the running back duo? Again, if you're giving up 150 yards on the ground to Kentucky, I definitely think a more mobile quarterback than Zach Calzada and Taylor Green for Arkansas here is going to be, a way bigger factor coming in this game. And the first question I had, how does the Ole Miss defense counter for the mobility of Taylor Green? You're not going against Zach Calzada this week. You're definitely facing a better quarterback, and he can move a little bit. So how does Ole Miss combat that? Will the Arkansas defensive line be able to get enough pressure on Austin Simmons to be able to force him into some mistakes again? Austin Simmons coming back home after his first true road test against Kentucky. I think if the Arkansas defensive line applies just a little more pressure than Kentucky did last week, there could be some more mistakes that come out of that, out of Austin Simmons. So I think that's something definitely to look out for. Can Taylor Green protect the ball? If you're throwing 2 interceptions against Arkansas State, that's definitely a big question mark, or something to keep an eye out for. Will he be able to just protect the ball and keep it with his guys? Is this a similar vibe to the Kentucky game last year for Ole Miss? If you remember going into that game, Ole Miss was undefeated at that point, number 6 in the country. Had Kentucky come into their building, completely was overlooking them, even though they had played close games before that in the past, in the previous years before last year's game, and they lost. They got upset at home by Bob Stoops in Kentucky. They were number 6 at that point, and their season only went downhill from there. So I think this game gives similar vibes to that. If Ole Miss overlooks Arkansas in this game, they could lose. I'm going to say that right now. If Ole Miss plays to even a little worse performance than against Kentucky last week, I think they lose. Arkansas is a better team than Kentucky. Arkansas has a better quarterback than Kentucky. It just gives similar vibes to that game last year. So that's just my opinion personally. It gives similar vibes to that game. And can Arkansas play spoiler? Kentucky had a chance last week. Lane Kiffin's teams have been, vulnerable in the past. We saw it against Kentucky last year, the Florida game last year. His teams have definitely, had some moments where they've sputtered and they looked very susceptible to, giving up plays. So I think that's definitely a narrative that could play out in this game. Could Arkansas go into Oxford and play spoiler? Some trends going into this game. Arkansas has covered the spread in 7 of their last 10 games against the spread. Average total in those games have been 54.8 points with an average differential of 8.6 points. Ole Miss has covered against the spread in 7 of their last 10. Average total of 55.3 points and a average differential of 18.3 points in the last 10 games. Ole Miss has won 3 of the last 4 games straight up against Arkansas. 3 of the last 10 of Ole Miss's team total has gone over 35.8 average, and the line is currently sitting at 34.5. So that might be something. I might look into more. Ole Miss under team total. Arkansas 3 of their last 4 against the spread versus Ole Miss, so they've covered the number in 3 of their last 4 against Ole Miss. 6 of the last 10 of their games went over the team total. The average has been 33.1 points per game, and the line currently sits at 27.5 points in favor of Arkansas. In the last 10 games, the average for Arkansas has been 24.5 points. One in their last 10. Average points against Arkansas's defense has been 24.5 points. That's gone over those teams' totals 1 out of the last 10 times. Averages against Ole Miss's defense has gone over 2 out of the last 10 times with an average of 17.5 points. As it comes to the model, I've got Ole Miss 33-24, under 61.5 points, because that is now 62.5. So that works out even better. Ole Miss 33-24. So therefore, I like Ole Miss to cover the number. I'm even getting a lower point now in FanDuel. It is -6.5, minus 114 odds on that. I like Ole Miss to win by at least a touchdown here. I don't think Ole Miss will allow the backdoor cover again this week. If you saw Lane Kiffin's post-game press conference after the game his post-game interview, he said sorry to America for the backdoor cover because he knew the line. So Lane Kiffin, you broke my heart, but it's all right. I don't think Ole Miss will allow the backdoor cover this time. Arkansas needs to prove it to me first before, if I lose it, they proved me wrong, honestly. Again, I need to see it, and I like the under 62.5 now, so I'm even getting a point from what my initial projection was. So I like the under in this game. Again, projected score 33-24 in favor of Ole Miss. So again, we like Ole Miss in the points, now -6.5 on FanDuel. Going on around the same time, huge bounce back spot for Florida here. We got the Gators going on the road to number 3 LSU. I will give you the current line. 1 second. Again, we are up to 80 live viewers. I appreciate all you guys joining in for the week 3 preview. If you could retweet the X stream and go subscribe on the YouTube, I would really appreciate it. Love all the support. Thank you guys for joining tonight. We're just hitting the hour mark now, so I appreciate all you guys that have stuck around here. We've got 2 more games to break down, and then a couple of bets that I've already placed. So yeah, the line is still LSU -7.5. Over under is down a point to 46.5. Florida is +220 on the money line. LSU -275 on the money line. So the money lines have changed a little bit. Florida, as we talked about them in the South Florida breakdown against Miami, they lost last week to South Florida. If anyone didn't know, which I know one AP voter did not know, or she did know, I don't know, but she's terrible at her job. We'll move on though. That's nothing against her gender at all. She just didn't do a good job of voting. Anyway, they lost to South Florida at home last week, 18-16. They looked lethargic, uninspired, and had a lack of discipline and awareness. I just showed that to the camera if you're listening back to this after. They looked lethargic, uninspired, had a lack of discipline and awareness. Penalties, the whole spitting situation, and time management at the end of the game with Billy Napier. Can't have it. Can't have it. Which DJ Lagway am I getting in this game? Am I getting the DJ Lagway that lit it up at the end of 2024 and came into this season as a Heisman hopeful? Or am I getting last week's DJ Lagway who, stunk it up? Didn't look good. Did not look good last week. Did not look good. Biggest factor to Florida's success is DJ Lagway, and he can't be looking passive. I understand there's a level of you have to run the play that's called, but at least have confidence in the play that is called. Or at least if you're Florida's offensive coordinator, call plays that you are confident in your quarterback in running. So then therefore you don't look lethargic and uninspired on offense. They have to clean up the penalties and discipline issues. They had 11 penalties for 103 yards last week, went 4 of 12 on third down. And again, you have the ball with 2.5 minutes left. 2.5 minutes left against South Florida. And you threw 3 pass plays or called 3 pass plays, gave the ball right back to South Florida with a minute left with 2 minutes left. South Florida, 8 plays, 87 yards, game-winning field goal, game's over. Missed tackle on the sideline could have played a big factor in how that game turned out in that last drive. Player gets ejected for spitting. What are we doing? What are we doing? That's like the biggest red flag in someone's character. If you're going to spit on an opposing player, it's unbelievable. Shout out Jalen Carter though for the Eagles. That was crazy. He started the whole thing. Is this a repeat of last week, or are they going to wake up, fight for their life like they did at the end of 2024? That's the last question mark I have for Florida. LSU, looked a little shaky last week. Excuse me. I need to drink a water before we get into LSU's side. I'm gonna go on mute. I'm gonna go on mute real quick. Sorry, breaking down Florida right there kind of made me feel some type of way, I guess. They beat LSU beat Louisiana Tech 23-7 at home last week. They were in control of the whole game, but there were some question marks, at least on the offensive side, coming out of that game. Garrett Nussmeier, again, why are we throwing the ball 41 times against Louisiana Tech? Aside from that, 26 of 41, 237 through the air with a touchdown and an interception. They combined for over 130 yards rushing, which is, solid. But again, it's Louisiana Tech, so LSU offensive line need to step it up. Barron Brown and Aaron Anderson have been the standout targets for Garrett Nussmeier. We know that. They held Louisiana Tech to 96 yards passing and less than 100 yards rushing. We love that. LSU defense, Blake Baker, calling a great game. If Blake Baker can eliminate Florida's ability to extend drives and force them into second and third and longs, it's LSU's game. That was my second to last point. And based off DJ Lagway last week, that's kind of a tongue twister. It's forcing the run game. It's honing in on the run game for LSU. If we're getting a DJ Lagway that performed like he did last week, it's just stopping the run at that point for Florida. Or at least for LSU's defense, stopping the run against Florida's offense. Trends coming into this game, we got Florida covering a 7.5 spread in 8 out of their last 10 games. Average total in those games have been 51.4 points and an average margin of 9.2 points. LSU has covered a 7.5-point spread in 4 of their last 10 games, 56.2 average in those games, and 3.5-point differential. Florida team total line is currently at 19.5. They've gone over that in 7 of their last 10 games. 28.8 point averages. LSU averages giving up in their last 10, 22.5 points. LSU has gone over the listed team total of 27.5 in 4 of their last 10 games with an average of 26 points in those games. And the Florida defense in their last 10 has given up 19.6 points in those games. Total wise, Florida has gone over the total in their games in 4 of their last 10, over with an average of 48.4 points. LSU has gone over in 5 of their last 10 games with an average of 48.5 points. My model spits out LSU 31, Florida 26. So round number in football terms, we'll say 31-27 LSU, 58.87% to win, with an average of 56.6 points. So we'll say 57 points. It's still at 7.5. I don't think I'm going to touch anything sidewise in this game. If I'm going to touch anything sidewise, I like the Florida team total over 19.5. I think there's somewhat of a bounce back spot for Florida's offense in this game, but I don't like anything. I don't like anything other than maybe the over total as well. I've even gotten a point. It's now down to 46.5. So maybe the total over. I think Florida covers the number. Maybe I'm not going to take anything on the side here other than maybe Florida's team total over 19.5. Maybe. I hate both sides in this game. It's really, am I getting, as others in the industry have called wounded animal mode? Am I going to get wounded animal mode from Florida here? That's the biggest question mark. Am I going to get wounded animal mode from Florida? It's all up to DJ Lagway. Again, lethargic, uninspired, lack of discipline and awareness from Florida last week. First note, DJ Lagway is the biggest contributor to that. He can easily flip the switch and look exactly like he did against, or at least at the end of the 2024 season, where he beat LSU and Ole Miss, and a good Tulane team in the bowl game. So I think, yeah, Florida and the points, not taking it, not betting it, but that's my pick. I like Florida to cover the number. LSU wins by a touchdown, if not 4 or 3. Anyway, LSU to win, Florida to cover the number. I like the Florida team total over 19.5. Again, have to preface this if you're now joining or have joined lately and missed me saying it. None of these plays are official yet. I will say one official play at the end of the stream, but none of these plays that I've said so far I've officially taken yet. These are just things that I'm liking or that I have made note of so far. But the last game that we're going to give a full breakdown to, the second headliner game of week 3, 7:30 Eastern kick on NBC in South Bend, Indiana. The number 16 ranked Texas A&M Aggies go on the road to play number 8 Notre Dame. I will give you the current line. Notre Dame earlier was 6.5-point favorite. It's fluctuated between 7.5 and 6.5. So just want to give the people the live number. Where is it? Oh, I passed it. Shoot. There it is. A&M. Notre Dame is still a 6.5-point favorite. The total has gone up a point to 50.5. A&M is now plus 198 on the money line at FanDuel, while Notre Dame is minus 245. So let's break it down. Texas A&M, 2 pretty comfortable wins so far. They beat UTSA 42-24, and Utah State 44-22. Marcel Reed, is a big question mark in this. Not a question mark, but he's definitely like an X factor of how this game could go. He's averaged 254 yards passing in the first 2 games, 21 completions, 4 touchdowns, 9 rushes for an average of 52.5 yards. Biggest factor here, he's thrown 7 touchdowns and had 0 interceptions, which I think is really, really important. Questions about the run game from my point of view. Le'Veon Moss and Ruben Owens are both off to slow starts in the A&M run game. I think they I can't remember the exact box scores. I think they both have not rushed over for 100 yards so far. Jake, I appreciate the repost on the stream. Thank you, buddy. They both haven't rushed for over 100 yards so far this season in either game, so I think that's definitely something to look out for. But huge standout, Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver, the 2 standout receivers for A&M coming into this game, have definitely been as advertised. Casey Concepcion, transferring over from NC State, was one of the top receivers in the portal before this season, and I think he's definitely could be a huge factor in this game if he's given the chances. But he's not the main X factor, at least on A&M side. It's Marcel Reed, and if he's able to limit turning the ball over, but also mainly Terry Bussey at receiver. He's listed as the 3rd string receiver for A&M. Hasn't really, produced in the first 2 games. I think he definitely could be an X factor in this game. If Notre Dame puts a lot of focus on Craver and Concepcion, or say on Moss and Owens in the backfield, I think Terry Bussey could definitely be a factor in favor of A&M side if Notre Dame doesn't cover him, or doesn't give him enough attention. But biggest question mark on A&M side by far is their defense has looked very suspect to this point. If you're giving up 22 and 24 through your first 2 games, a lot of rushing yards given up, that I wasn't really expecting from the A&M defense. But do they have the ability to, at least compete against a strong Notre Dame offensive line coming to this game? And speaking of Notre Dame, coming off a bye week, an odd bye week in week 2, but they lost Miami in their first game, 24-21 on the road. I think CJ Carr is the right pick at quarterback for Notre Dame. Obviously, I think in the environment and the defense he was going against in week 1, I think he definitely had a very solid performance. He went 19 of 30, 221 through the air, 2 touchdowns and an interception. Also had a rushing touchdown. So I think CJ Carr definitely is the right choice at quarterback for Notre Dame. They have to get Jeremiah Love the ball. He had 10 carries in that game for 48 yards. If you want this offense to be able to produce at its highest efficiency, you got to get your best player the ball. We got to give Jeremiah Love the ball. I expect at least 20 carries for Jeremiah Love in this game, as opposed to I expect at least double from the Miami game. He's got to get at least 20 carries. Can't fully rely on Jadarian Price, who is also a really good running back, but you got to use him in spells for Jeremiah Love. You see what I'm getting at? You got to use him to give Jeremiah Love, a couple plays off, and then we're getting Love right back in there. You got to run this offense through Jeremiah Love. What wide receiver will step up for Notre Dame? We got Greathouse, we got Fields, we got Faison. What wide receiver is going to step up for Notre Dame in this spot? I think is a huge question. If they can stay in front and control the sticks, I think obviously at home that'll play a lot in their favor. And can the Notre Dame defense limit plays of explosiveness and not let Marcel Reed extend plays with his legs? He's a way more mobile quarterback than Carson Beck. He's way more mobile than Connor Wegman, who you played last year when you went to A&M to start the season. So I think that's a huge factor of how the Notre Dame defense handles the mobile ability of Marcel Reed. Trends coming into this game: A&M 8 of the last 10 against the spread in that 6.5 line they've covered. Average total in those games have been 52.4 with a differential of 9.1. Notre Dame has covered a 6.5 spread in 7 of their last 10. Average total in those games have been 49.6 and a differential of 16.8. So let's say 17. A&M, 8 of their last 10 games have gone over the listed 20.5 team total. Average A&M points in those games have been 33.6. And the Notre Dame defense in their last 10 has averaged 19.2 points given up, and that's hit. That's 4 out of the last 10 games that's happened. Notre Dame's side, their team total listed at 28.5. That's gone over 5 out of the last 10 times with an average score of 36. In the A&M defense in their last 10, 24.5 points given up average, and that's gone over, or that's hit 3 out of the last 10 times. Total wise, A&M 8 out of the last 10 games have gone over 49.5 with a 58.1 average. Notre Dame 7 out of the last 10 have gone over 49.5 with a 55.2 average. My model spits out 31-25 Notre Dame with a 62.84% win percentage and a 55.9. So we'll say 53 or 56, 56 on the total. If I have a play here, I actually like the over. I like the over 49.5. I think that 6.5 line is a little sneaky. Mainly because of some of the X factors that I've listed. Marcel Reed, how he's going to perform. If he can limit the turnovers. If A&M suddenly gets a run game. If Terry Bussey, has a standout game for A&M as the third receiver, I think he's definitely a player to watch out for. If Jeremiah Love gets the production he's really meant to get, if a receiver steps up for Notre Dame in this game, and if the Notre Dame defense can handle the explosiveness and the mobile ability of Marcel Reed. 6.5 lines a little sneaky. I think I projected 31-25. That realistically could be 31-24, which Notre Dame then covers, or it could be 31-27, in which A&M covers. So I think it's based on the little in between, point there that it's giving. I don't like either side in this game, unless you're taking an alt spread or one of the money lines. I like the over 49.5, mainly because both these teams, 8 out of the last 10 for A&M, 7 out of the last 10 for Notre Dame. They've both averaged 58 and 55 in their last 10 games for the total. I like the 49.5. I think Notre Dame wins with the run game. I also like the A&M team total over 20.5, mainly because they've averaged 33.6 in their last 10. Their team total has hit over 20.5 in 8 out of their last 10 games. And Notre Dame has had an average of 19.2 points given up against them in their last 10. And it's only gone over in 4 of the last 10, but still 20.5. We're asking for 3 touchdowns, A&M, and I think that's doable here, especially with the model projection, putting them at 25. So I think it's definitely doable. That's not an official play. If I have an official play in this game that you're taking, I like the over 49.5. That's my main play for this game, over 49.5. That is all we got for the main games breaking down. I will say, and I can put it up right now. We do have one play already live, already out there. Well, maybe not out there to the public yet until right now. But one play that I have officially bet on. Actually, I'm not gonna pull up a graphic. I'm just gonna go full screen here so we can get A&M and Notre Dame off the screen. All right. We have one play that we have already put. We've already bet it. It is. I'll type it out so if people aren't listening, they can still read it. And add and show. Bang. We have Cal minus 120 on the money line against Minnesota. Both of these teams are 2-0. Cal, if you've seen anything of Cal football to this point so far, Sagapolotele, their quarterback, he's a lefty. He was swinging it against Oregon State. They're 2-0 against another 2-0 team in Minnesota, having to cross the country to go to Cal. It's a 10:30 p.m. kickoff. So if you're a real college football sicko, if you're a madman, you will be awake for this game to watch it, and I will be awake to watch it because I got money on it. We're rocking with Sagapolotele in the Cal Bears on the money line, minus 120 against Minnesota. The Calgorithm will be fully back if they beat PJ Fleck and the Ski U Ma. I fully believe it. I like Sagapolotele. He's got a little Tua in him, not only because he is like of the Polynesian descent or Samoan descent, whichever it is. No, I'm not trying to be mean there. I just don't know off the top of my head. He's got a little Tua in him. He's lefty. He can sling it. He started the season 6 for 6 against Oregon State with a touchdown on their first drive. So I really like him in this spot against a Minnesota defense, hung around, was letting Buffalo hang around with them in their first game. And then obviously I know they blew out whoever FCS team they played last week. But if you're letting Buffalo, kind of hang around with you a little bit in your first game, that leaves me to question you. So we're going to take Cal minus 120 on the money line, 10:30 kick on Saturday out there at Cal. I think it's good value. And the Calgorithm will be fully back when they win this game. Not if, when they win this game. They beat Minnesota at home to go to 3-0. And that is all I got. That is our week 3 breakdown. I appreciate everyone joining. We have 130 viewers on Twitter right now. That is insane. So I appreciate everyone tuning into the stream. Remember, if you are on Twitter, remember to give me a follow, like, and retweet the stream as well. So if people want to go back and watch it, they can. The VOD, the on-demand video will be on YouTube. So if anyone wants to go back on YouTube as well and watch it, we went just over an hour and 20 minutes. So again, I appreciate everyone tuning in. Remember to go subscribe to us over on YouTube at Love for the Game. TikTok, Instagram, X at LFTGpod01. Like, comment, and subscribe as always. And go give us a rating over on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. I would really appreciate that as well. And also thank you to Squad Blitz and Outlier for sponsoring this episode of Love for the Game. Really appreciate their support as well. The links are down in the description on YouTube and in my link tree on my Twitter bio for anyone that's interested in those services. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Thank you to everyone on X who tuned in. Thank you to Jake again for reposting the stream. I really appreciated that. Thank you guys for watching. And have a great rest of your week. Week 3, baby. We're here. Real quick note, all my live plays will be put out tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. Sometime tomorrow, my official plays for the weekend will be put out. Appreciate all the support, guys. Thank you for joining me, and have a great week 3. We'll see you on Sunday.